Welcome back, adventurers, once again to Let's Play Chaos Head. And it appears that our ordeal this time around is going to be far from over, because in the last episode, well, I decided to unlock the path of the B route by selectively choosing 11 certain delusion triggers, and I think I managed to do it because at the train encounter um, between Senna, Takumi, and Detective Suwa, things changed a bit. Not only did Suwa manipulate Senna into murdering Issei Hatano by making him appear to be Ganeshi Narose while making himself pretend to be Hatano. And then instead of using the stakes from the third New Gen incident against Takumi, uh, looks like Suwa instead is going to make Takumi suffer to avenge his fallen disciple or fellow disciple Shino Hazuki. And the way that he's going to get his vengeance on Takumi is by making him endure the perspectives of, I believe, all 7 new gen incidents which he and Hazuki were both personally involved with, since together they were the new gen criminals. And we've only been through the first 2 so far. The group dive incident, which at the last second, the real Takumi Nishijo may have tried to intervene to save the lives of the 5 students that died from the roof of Cornelius Tower, which would actually explain the photo discrepancy. The Roppongi Builds building that materialized out of nowhere and then dematerialized. And unfortunately, whatever the Takumi's true aims were, that wasn't enough to save the lives of the unfortunate students that sadly fell to their deaths. Then again, they probably would have died through whatever psychological nightmare that Suwa was showing them via the Noah 2 terminal. And from then on, Takumi got a first-hand glimpse of the second case, the pregnant man, which was started by Hazuki herself and then finished um, rather grisly by Suwa, again in his Count Darth Spider disguise. And now we're in the streets of here, which, yeah, we've been here before. This is case number 3, the staking. The ache and the itchiness had subsided minutely, but it didn't mean they'd gone away completely. Now, even as I walked through the neighborhood of Shinsen, itchiness in the depths of my body, and the sensation of something foreign in my abdomen, and a pain like a needle plunging in and out all over my body, they stay behind in me like a tumor, continuing to torment me. And it's only about to get worse. A dark road with few people on it, located away from the heart of the city. As I walked down it, I spotted a human figure coming my way. Since the road was narrow, we would have to angle ourselves sideways to pass one another. But I went cold when I saw the appearance of the figure walking toward me. It was that Darth Spider-Man again. We crossed paths. Darth Spider showed no particular reaction. My heart went into a tumult. An emotion resembling obsession rose at the back of my brain. There's no two at work again. A nasty old arsehole had been hitting on my woman. It pissed me off. I wanted to kill him. Ah, we've heard this before. On the news bulletin where that said the new gen criminal had been arrested, or a suspect had been arrested. That feeling, truly coming out of left field, drove me into motion. The face of my woman was vague in my memory. I couldn't recall her clearly. It was doubtful that she even existed in the first place. Despite that, the face of the nasty old arsehole who had been hitting on my woman appeared vividly at the back of my mind. I'd seen that face before. He was the victim of the staking incident. And it seems that the man Takumi is currently seeing through was the man who was arrested. But yeah, looks like parts of his testimony actually did check out. Yeah, so Kameda did actually had actually choked Professor Ota to death, or so it seemed. But then again, Suwa with his Noah 2 terminal were definitely close by, manipulating the situation. So at this point, Ota would have been definitely dead, at least in reality. Except that's not how it played out in the suspect's mind. And there it is. There is the connection from Phantasm. Yeah, the lyrics did not predict the new gen crimes. The crimes simply used the lyrics to their advantage. So in the A route, and as well as the double A route, the suspect used the stakes that Suwa would eventually use against Takumi himself, only to have his delusion hijacked and reversed. But sadly, that isn't the case in Route B. My consciousness returned to the operating room, but I wasn't the pregnant man. Is this case number 4? Or is this case 5? In which case, we'd actually be jumping through a bit. But I think that Suwa probably wants us to experience all the new gen crimes that he and Hazuki committed. Although the pain from it and the sensation of an object in my stomach kept torturing my nerves to their very limit. There were two human forms in my field of sight. They watched me steadily with bated breath. One was Darth Spider. The other was Shino Hazuki. Her uniform wasn't stained by blood now, and so I soon figured out that this wasn't the pregnant man incident, but instead something taking place at a different time. I'd been made to lie in bed. The needle for an IV drip was stuck in my arm. But it wasn't as if anything were flowing into me. The liquid pouring down the IV tube was flowing backwards. So this is case number 4. Blood. Type B blood to be exact. In other words, this is the vampire house crime, in which a man was drained with blood, or had his blood drained, and then somehow his skin turned an eerie, sickening lime green. Oh dear. As I said before, this ordeal is far from over. Ah, so Hazuki and Suwa were lovers, which explains why Suwa is going to such great lengths to punish Takumi Nishijo for her death. Each was as twisted and broken as the other, it seems. I realized that this was a vicarious experience. I was being forced to vicariously experience the sequence of new gen murders. The pain and fear from each one of them, I was being forced to taste it. If so, then there were still 3 remaining. Becoming aware of that, I despaired. Yeah.
Sensei.
And, speaking of case number 5... Oh my god. Someone addressed me and I came back to myself. I should have been in the operating room, but I was standing in the hospital corridor. We all know how this ends.
Takashino-sensei.
When Shino Hazuki made her superior, Dr. Fumio Takashina, the 5th victim. Still without any connection to my will, my body turned to face behind me. It was Shino Hazuki, wearing a somewhat melancholy expression.
折り入ってご相談があるんですが。ここだと人目につきますから、こっちに。
Little does Dr. Takashina know, at this point until it's too late, that he is being led to his death. She said apologetically, then entered an examining room. I shouted, "Don't go," on my heart, but of course my voice didn't reach him. And we've already seen this from Hazuki's memories as well, about the fact that she was the one that cut his head open and scooped out part of his brain, and then left him for dead. But now we're going to experience it from the other side. Since the current time was outside treatment hours, there was nobody in the examining room. Hazuki continued toward the back. I, Dr. Takashina, followed her without harboring any suspicions whatsoever. She came to an abrupt stop. Just as I wondered what she was doing, a man with something black on his head sprang out from the shadows. While I stood there in startlement, he pushed something like gauze over my mouth. I then lost consciousness. Some sort of knockout chemical, I suppose. A huge noise rang in my ears. My skull was vibrating ferociously. It wasn't just vibrating, it was being whittled away. I felt that sensation distinctly. And thus the fifth new gen case unfolds.
頭蓋骨が外れましたよ、先生。まあ、先生の硬膜、とても綺麗だわ。
In other words, I would be tempted to say that Hazuki and Suwa are the Bonnie and Clive, or Clyde, or whatever it is. You know what I'm talking about. Of the new gen incidents. Now we're experiencing Takashina's own thoughts, and not Hazuki's. Or not simply Hazuki's. And of course Suwa is there as well. Of course.
人は脳死状態でも人工呼吸器なしで1週間以上生きたっていう事例があるんです。ご存知ですか？それってつまり、脳がなくてもしばらくは生きていられるっていうことですよね。先生はどれくらい生きられるかしら。
Yeah. Both Mamoru Suwa and Shino Hazuki, the twin serial killers,
高階先生に信仰の救いあれ。
perpetuators of the new generation madness. Yeah. She literally scooped out his brains with a spoon. Once again, very macabre, very gruesome. We can endure this.
救いあれ。
Murdering her own superior. Emotions different from what I actually felt welled up inside me. And now we're case number 6. They dwelt separately from my heart, my soul, the consciousness known as me, thrusting at me the ambiguity of my own existence. As my psyche went to shreds via this mental rape, which would ultimately lead to the denial of my existence. I found myself walking under a railroad overpass. Taking the order into consideration, this time it would be the tasty hand. As expected, my body had become female. I was awfully hungry. Maybe the victim had been on a diet or something. I crossed paths with, you guessed it, Darth Spider-Man once again. He appeared and disappeared when I least expected it. Given how much his appearance made him stand out, why hadn't the police or the media picked up on any information about him? Maybe Suwa wasn't the only one in the police department with connections to Nozomi. Then again, considering the fact that Suwa himself was a member of the police department, he could just hide behind his public image. Darth Spider spoke for the first time. He pointed at my right hand as he said it, a surreal spectacle, changing his voice yet again. And of course, using Noah too. Suwa manipulated the poor woman into devouring her own hand when making her think that she was actually holding food. And of course, we all know what happened, how this story ends. Tragically is the answer to that statement. Very unfortunately, tragically. Of course, with her reason gone. Hmm. Tragic power of delusions made manifest. And of course, Suwa completing his grisly work there. And now here we are to case number 7. And we're back here in the alley again. I opened my eyes in a dim alley. The backdrop was a little different from before. As I walked, I leaned on the shoulder of a thuggish guy with his face pummeled to a pulp, looking like he was about to cry. The 3 goons who Darth Spider paid off to try and deal with Takumi Nichijou, only to be dealt with in turn with the D-sword of Kozue Orihara. But even though she pretty much beat the living daylights out of them with her D-sword, she didn't kill them outright. That was Suwa's doing. 3 of them were in awful state, myself included. Their clothes were drenched in blood and their faces puffed up, and they'd chipped a number of teeth. The one who'd done this was probably me. No, it was Kozue. They were the trio of thugs who picked a fight with me, and after this they would have their torsos torn apart and would die. And stitched back with the same fishing line that Suwa used in the second case. Again, the Darth Spider-Man stood at the end of their path. Of course, he would have murdered them whether or not they'd actually managed to deal with Takumi himself. The guy who was lending me his shoulder yelled at Darth Spider. But with his face looking the way it was, his intimidation factor pretty much dropped by half. Hate to break it to you, but Suwa was never going to give you any money. Your only reward would be death. One of them seized Darth Spider. Grabbing him by the collar, he heaved him up and smacked the black helmet. He forced the helmet to come off. I had an idea of whose face would appear beneath it, and it really was Mamoru Suwa's fearless face. He was Shino Hazuki's accomplice, so he had been the other new-gen criminal. 2 of them there were. Suwa rammed a knee into the belly of the guy who was making a grab for him. The polish evident in how he carried himself set him utterly apart from the thugs and their violence. The ground shook slightly. I felt a presence at Suwa's back, immersed in darkness deep in the narrow alley. Something was there. Moreover, it prompted me to imagine it as being of a normal size. In addition, it let out an uncanny growl. Though we couldn't see it, the vivid bloodlust emitted by that monster made all 3 of our hearts wither utterly. At last it showed itself, a literal monster together with footsteps that sounded like the ground rumbling. So grotesque, it looked like nothing else like it existed anywhere on Earth. Really enjoying this. Yeah, really going full ham on the whole Spark Wars theme there, Suwa. Summoning a rancor out of delusions and negative particles. Its brown skin glistened wetly, and its colossal head sat low on its shoulders. Its red eyes glinted fiercely, and its mouth was torn wide across its face on either side, and its wrists were about as thick as its legs. Oh, its wrists were thick around as logs, sorry. Can't read. The bipedal monster came up to Sua's side, then opened its mouth all the way. Its rows of sharp fangs shone, reflecting the light of the street lamps. Its roar was as low as a growl, and put greater fear in me than any beast I'd ever heard before in my life. But because this delusion is only being observed by the three thugs, no one else is going to hear the roar. It had the ferocity to make those who heard it quiver down to their very souls.
なんだこれ。スパークウォーズが好きなんすよ。
Yeah, as I thought, Suwa. But a Sith Lord you are not. Suwa alone appeared completely unbothered by the monster's appearance. On the contrary, he touched the monster's leg with apparent satisfaction, stroking it.
それに出てくるエイリアンっす。
Yeah, it's a rancor, I just said that. A second roar, then the monster pressed a step closer to the stock-stool trio. I tried to run. There was no way I could escape. I tried to call for help. There was no one in the area. An overwhelming power discrepancy. The difference in our latent potential of species was much too great. With the beast before us, we three were all too helpless. For the first time in our lives, we experienced heartfelt fear. When people end up like that, they fall silent, shrink back, become unable to move so much as a single finger. The monster let out one breath, and it swung down its log-like arms. In an instant, their two bodies had been torn apart, as if they were dolls. Blood and intestines splattered across the street, steaming, and it hurled their divided corpses viciously, spearing them on the handles attached to a telephone pole, dangling them down.
あとは君だけっすよ。
Sua's gaze penetrated me. I woke to the fact that he was the one setting this alien to work. I told myself this was a delusion, but it didn't do any good. Faced with absolute terror and overwhelming violence, I just sank down and pissed myself. Afterward, it was all I could do to look dazedly up at that monstrosity. And my torso ripped apart. And as I got a taste of this killing method that regular people would never ever experience, I breathed my last. Gruesome. It's the only way to describe it. And that should be it. How many times have I vicariously died by now? 3 times? 1 time? 7 times? The answer is 7. 4 times, 2 times, 5 times. Human flesh is pretty damn tasty. It hurts. No more. Darth Spider's get-up is surreal. A gag. How many times have I died? Who's saying you died? I'm not dead. That's true. That monster is straight out of a horror movie. But Suwa said the monster came from Spark Wars. Yeah, what about it? And this just keeps going on and on. And a thought that is sadly reminiscent of when I actually forgot his name for a moment. Daisuke, there we go. Daisuke Mishima, or Mizumi, sorry. Heard a rumor that the new gen killer was a woman. I think the one spreading that rumor might have been Suwa. Of course, Takumi's sanity is being torn apart. But at long last, the nightmarish delusions of observing the new generation madness have finally come to an end. And that is actually going to be it for this episode of Let's Play Chaos Head. And when we return, it's back to the train station and reality. As always, adventurers, until next we meet.